We are the CEO's secret offspring.
The glass doors of JK Technologies slid open with a soft hiss, and two small figures walked through with the kind of confidence that made grown men step aside. Chidi adjusted his worn backpack, his dark eyes scanning the marble lobby with calculated precision, while his sister Amara clutched a manila folder against her chest like it contained the secrets of the universe, which, in a way, it did. "Excuse me," Chidi said to the receptionist, his Korean flawless despite the slight accent that marked him as different. "We're here to see Kang Min-jae." The receptionist, a woman in her late 20s with perfectly applied makeup, blinked at the two 9-year-olds standing before her desk. "I'm sorry, children. Do you have an appointment?" "We don't need an appointment," Amara said, her voice steady. "We're his children." The lobby went silent. 3 employees waiting for the elevator turned to stare. A security guard halfway across the room stopped mid-stride. The receptionist's professional smile froze on her face like a computer screen that had crashed. I'm sorry. What did you say?" Chidi reached into his backpack and pulled out a document, sliding it across the pristine white desk. "This is a paternity test. 99.9% probability. We're Kang Min-jae's children, and we need to see him now." 43 floors above, Kang Min-jae sat in his corner office, staring at a presentation on sustainable energy solutions without really seeing it. At 34, he had built JK Technologies from a startup in his parents' garage to a multinational corporation that had revolutionized mobile technology. Forbes called him a visionary. Business Korea dubbed him the Ice Prince of Seoul's tech world. His mother called him a disappointment for remaining unmarried at his age. None of them knew about the medical report locked in his private safe. The one that had shattered his world 6 years ago with 2 words: severe oligospermia. Functionally, infertile. The chances of him ever fathering children were so infinitesimally small that 3 different doctors had told him to accept reality and consider adoption if he ever wanted a family. He had accepted it, built walls around the grief, thrown himself into work, avoided serious relationships because what woman would want a future with a man who couldn't give her children? Korea was traditional that way, no matter how modern Seoul pretended to be. His phone buzzed. Park Ji-hoon, his assistant and one of the few people he considered a friend. "Sir, we have a situation in the lobby. Security needs you." Min-jae frowned. "What kind of situation?" There was a pause, the kind that preceded very bad news. "Children, sir. 2 of them. They're claiming to be your offspring and they have documentation." The phone slipped from Min-jae's hand, clattering onto his desk. For a moment, the world tilted. Then logic reasserted itself. Impossible. This was a scam, a scheme, someone trying to extort money or damage his reputation. It happened to wealthy men all the time. "I'm coming down," he said, his voice cold. "Have security contain them, but don't call the police yet. I want to see what kind of game this is." Across the city, in a cramped apartment in Yeongdong-pogu, Beauty Okonkwo dropped her phone, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest. Her children, her babies, gone. The school had called 20 minutes ago. Chidi and Amara had walked out during lunch break, somehow bypassing 3 teachers and the security guard. The CCTV footage showed them leaving hand in hand, Chidi with his backpack, Amara with that folder she'd been hiding under her bed for weeks. Beauty had found the folder once while cleaning, a paternity test, DNA results, a printed article about Kang Min-jae from a business magazine. She had confronted the twins that night, and they had looked at her with those impossibly intelligent eyes. Chidi's analytical, Amara's determined, and asked her if she was going to lie to them about their father forever. She should have known they would do this, should have seen it coming. Her children were brilliant, speaking 4 languages fluently, coding complex programs, devouring university-level textbooks. Of course they would find a way to locate the man whose comb she had stupidly kept in a box of memories she should have burned years ago. Beauty grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. She had spent 5 years avoiding this moment, building a life on her own terms, raising her children with love and stubbornness and whatever money she could scrape together from 2 jobs. She had spent 5 years telling herself that Kang Min-jae didn't deserve to know about the miracles he had left behind after one night of connection at a corporate networking event she had been catering. One night, that was all it had been. He had been charming, attentive, different from the other wealthy men who barely acknowledged the help. They had talked about technology and art and dreams. She had felt seen for the first time since moving to Korea, and then he had left with a kiss and a promise to call, and she had never heard from him again. When she discovered she was pregnant, she had tried to find him, but Kang Min-jae was a common enough name, and without a company name or phone number, her search had led nowhere. By the time she saw his face on a magazine cover 8 months into her pregnancy, she was too proud and too tired to reach out. He was a CEO, a celebrity. She was a pregnant Nigerian immigrant who could barely afford rent, so she had her babies alone, raised them alone, loved them alone, and now they had walked into the lion's den without her. Beauty ran for the subway, praying she wouldn't be too late. In the JK Technologies lobby, a crowd had gathered. Employees on their lunch break, security guards forming a perimeter. Park Ji-hoon stood near the receptionist's desk, reading the paternity test results with growing disbelief, while Chidi and Amara sat calmly on a leather sofa like they were waiting for a dental appointment. "How did you get this test done?" Ji-hoon asked, crouching to their eye level. He had a kind face, Amara thought, not like some of the security guards who looked at them like they were criminals. "We saved money from our allowances and odd jobs," Chidi explained. "We also sold some of our coding projects online. It took us 6 months. We collected our father's DNA from a comb he left at our apartment 5 years ago. Aoma kept it in a box. We sent it to a private lab with our own samples along with money we'd earned." Ji-hoon stared at them. 9-year-olds. They were 9 years old, and they had conducted a covert paternity test operation like tiny detectives, even earning money to fund it. "How did you even think of all this?" "We read a lot," Amara said simply. "And we're very good at research. We're top of our class in everything. Ioma says we get it from her, but we wanted to know if we got anything from our father too. So we found out." The elevator chimed. The crowd parted. Kang Min-jae stepped into the lobby, and Chidi and Amara stood up simultaneously, their eyes locked on the man who looked so much like them it was almost supernatural. The same strong jawline, the same intense eyes, the same way of standing perfectly still while the world moved around them. Min-jae stopped 3 meters away, his face unreadable. He had prepared himself for many things, a scam, a trap, blackmail, but he had not prepared for the shock of recognition that jolted through him when he saw their faces. His face, twice over. These weren't toddlers. These were children, real children, with intelligent eyes that assessed him with the same calculating gaze he used in boardrooms. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside his chest. "I'm Chidi," the boy said, standing straighter. "This is my twin sister, Amara. We're 9 years old. Our birthday is March 15th. We live in Yeongdong-po-gu with our mother, Beauty Okonkwo. We attend Seoul International Elementary School. We speak Korean, English, Igbo, and we're learning Mandarin. We both code in Python and JavaScript. I'm particularly interested in artificial intelligence, and Amara specializes in cybersecurity. And according to this DNA test from one of Korea's most reputable laboratories, you're our biological father with a 99.9% probability." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Min-jae felt his knees weaken. He wanted to deny it, to call security, to make this impossible situation disappear. But the test results in Ji-hoon's hand were from a lab he himself had used for corporate genetic research projects. And those faces, God, those faces, they weren't just similar, they were unmistakably his. "This is impossible," he said quietly. "I can't have children. I have a medical condition." "Severe oligospermia," Chidi said, and Min-jae's head snapped up. "We hacked into your medical records. Don't worry. We covered our tracks and we didn't share the information with anyone. We needed to understand why you might not have known about us. Your condition means you have a very low sperm count, not 0. The probability was low, but not impossible. And clearly, against all odds, we happened. We're statistical anomalies. Miracles, if you believe in that sort of thing." Min-jae stared at this 9-year-old boy who had just admitted to hacking his private medical files with the casual confidence of a seasoned cybercriminal. You hacked my records?" "It was surprisingly easy," Amara said, sounding almost disappointed. "Your hospital's security protocols are outdated. You should consider upgrading them. We could help with that, actually. For a fee, of course. We're saving for university." Despite everything, Min-jae felt a laugh bubble up in his throat, half hysteria and half disbelief. "You're 9 years old and you're already planning for university?" "We're 9 years old and we've already been accepted into a special program for gifted students," Chidi corrected. "We start next semester. It's expensive, though. Ioma is working extra shifts to afford it. That's actually one reason we came to find you. Not for a handout, but because we believe parents have a responsibility to contribute to their children's education, even if they didn't know those children existed." The brutal honesty was like a knife between Min-jae's ribs. He took the folder from Ji-hoon with shaking hands. Inside were the test results, birth certificates listing Beauty Okonkwo as mother and father unknown, report cards showing straight A's in every subject, certificates from coding competitions they'd won, and a photograph of 2 infants in a hospital nursery, so small they fit together in one incubator. His children. Born 9 years ago while he was probably in some boardroom, completely unaware that the impossible had become possible. "Your mother," he said hoarsely. "Beauty. I remember her. She was at a corporate event. We talked for hours. He trailed off, aware of young ears listening. "I lost her contact information. My phone was stolen that night. I tried to find her, but I didn't even know her full name or which catering company she worked for." "She tried to find you too," Amara said, her voice softer now. "She told us about it once. She said she looked for weeks but couldn't find you. When she finally saw you in a magazine, she was already pregnant and too proud to reach out. She said you were too important and we would just be a scandal. So she raised us by herself. She works as a nursing assistant during the day and cleans offices at night. She's always tired, but she never complains. She sings to us at night, even when her voice is hoarse from exhaustion. She's the strongest person we know, and you missed everything." The accusation in Amara's voice cut deeper than any business rival's betrayal. Min-jae felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been frozen for years. 9 years. They were 9 years old. He had missed first words, first steps, first days of school, every birthday, every milestone. His children had grown into these remarkable, brilliant, terrifying young people without him. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I swear to you, I didn't know." "We believe you," Chidi said, his analytical mind clearly having already processed this conclusion. "The evidence suggests you genuinely didn't know. That's why we came. Aoma didn't want us to, but we needed to know you. We needed you to know about us. We have questions. Genetic questions, medical history questions, and also, we wanted to know if you were a good person, if you were worth knowing." "And what's your assessment so far?" Min-jae asked, feeling like he was being interviewed rather than meeting his children for the first time. Chidi and Amara exchanged one of those twin looks that seemed to communicate entire conversations silently. "Preliminary data is promising," Chidi said, "but we'll need more time for a full evaluation." Min-jae almost smiled. "Almost. Are you hungry?" he asked suddenly. "Have you eaten?" "We had lunch at school before we left," Amara said. "But we could eat again. We're growing children. We need proper nutrition." "Come to my office," Min-jae said, making a decision he couldn't take back. "We should talk properly, and we need to call your mother. She must be terrified." "She's probably on her way here already," Chidi said, pulling out a smartphone that had clearly seen better days, the screen covered in cracks held together with tape. "We left our location sharing on. She tracks us for safety. She should arrive in approximately..." He checked his phone. 12 minutes, assuming normal subway delays. Of course they had calculated it. Of course this woman he barely remembered but couldn't forget had been responsible, careful, protecting these precious children while he lived in ignorance. And of course his children were smart enough to plan for every contingency, including their mother's inevitable arrival. They rode the elevator in silence, the twins flanking him like small bodyguards. Ji-hoon behind them, looking like he'd witnessed a miracle. The other employees who had squeezed into the elevator stared openly until Ji-hoon glared them into submission. Min-jae's office was a study in minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. Modern furniture. Awards and patents displayed on walls. Chidi and Amara walked in and immediately went to the window, but not like children pressed against glass in wonder. They studied the view with the same analytical approach they seemed to apply to everything. "The structural engineering of this building is impressive," Chidi observed. "The cantilevered design must have required complex calculations for load-bearing capacity." "I'm more interested in the security systems," Amara said, her eyes tracking something Min-jae couldn't see. "I count at least 6 cameras in this office alone, plus motion sensors and what looks like biometric access controls. Solid, but not impenetrable." "Please don't hack my office security," Min-jae said, and was rewarded with a small smile from Amara. "We wouldn't do that without permission," she said. "That would be unethical. We have standards." "But you hacked my medical records," Min-jae pointed out. "That was different," Chidi said seriously. "That was information we had a right to know as your biological children. Your office security isn't relevant to our genetic heritage." The logic was twisted but somehow made sense in a 9-year-old genius way. Min-jae gestured to the chairs around his conference table, and the twins sat, placing their worn backpacks carefully on the floor. Up close, Min-jae could see the signs of their life more clearly. Chidi's shirt was clean but faded, clearly handed down or bought secondhand. Amara's shoes were scuffed, the soles wearing thin, but their posture was proud, their eyes bright with intelligence and determination. "Tell me about your lives," he said softly. "Tell me everything." And they did. They told him about their tiny apartment where they all slept in one room because Beauty couldn't afford a bigger place, but how they didn't mind because it meant they were always together. About their mother, teaching them languages and mathematics at the kitchen table, how she would quiz them in English, Korean, and Igbo, sometimes mixing all 3 in one sentence just to keep them sharp. About how she bought them secondhand textbooks from university students and encouraged them to read ahead, to question everything, to never let anyone make them feel small for being different. They told him about the kids at school who sometimes called them names for looking different, for having a foreign mother, for not having a father. About learning to code because it was something they could do that didn't require money, just access to the library's computers. About the neighbors who helped Beauty when she was sick, the Korean grandmother next door who taught them to make kimchi and spoke slowly so they could practice their Korean. The Nigerian uncle who ran a small shop and gave them candy and told them stories about Lagos. They told him about being hungry sometimes, not starving but that gnawing feeling when dinner was just rice and eggs because money was tight at the end of the month. About their mother crying quietly in the bathroom when she thought they were asleep, her shoulders shaking with exhaustion and stress. About the way she smiled anyway, every morning, and told them they could be anything they wanted to be in this world, that their circumstances didn't define their potential. "She's very strong," Chidi said, "stronger than anyone we know. But we can see how tired she is, how much she sacrifices. We calculated once how many hours she sleeps per week. It's not enough. We worry about her health. That's why we came to find you," Amara added. "Not just for us, but for her too. She needs help, even though she'd never ask for it. She deserves help. And we hoped, that maybe you'd want to help, or at least know we exist, that we're real, that we matter." Min-jae turned away, staring out at the city he had conquered, while his children grew up counting their mother's sleep hours and calculating whether they could afford fresh vegetables that week. "I want to help," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I want to be part of your lives, if you'll let me. If your mother will let me." "Ioma is very stubborn," Amara warned. "She doesn't like accepting help. She'll probably be angry that we came here. She'll definitely be angry that we hacked your medical records." "You're going to tell her about that?" Min-jae asked, alarmed. "We don't keep secrets from Ioma," Chidi said firmly. "She's always been honest with us. We owe her the same respect." Before Min-jae could respond, his office door burst open without warning. Beauty Okonkwo stood in the doorway, breathless from running. Her nursing assistant uniform wrinkled, her natural hair pulled back in a hasty bun that was coming loose, her dark eyes blazing with a mixture of relief and fury and fear. "Chidi! Amara!" She rushed past Min-jae like he was furniture, dropping to her knees and pulling both children into her arms with a force that made them grunt. "Don't you ever do that again. I thought," her voice broke, "I thought something happened to you. I thought I lost you. Do you understand what you put me through?" "We're sorry, Aoma," Amara said, and this time she did sound genuinely sorry. "We didn't mean to scare you. We were careful." Careful. Beauty pulled back, cupping their faces in her hands, her own face wet with tears. You left school without permission. You took the subway across the city alone. You walked into a corporate building and announced you were the CEO's children. Anything could have happened to you. Anything. But nothing did, Chidi said, though his voice was gentler now. And now he knows about us. Look, Ioma, look at him. Don't we have his face? Weren't you always right about that? Beauty stood slowly, finally allowing herself to look at the man she hadn't seen in 5 years. Kang Min-jae, still handsome, maybe more so now, the years having added character to his features, still composed, still carrying himself like he owned the world. But there was something different in his eyes now, something broken and raw, and entirely unlike the confident man she remembered from that one night. "Hello, Beauty," he said quietly, and just hearing him say her name made something twist painfully in her chest. "Don't," she said sharply, her voice cracking like a whip. "Don't act like we're old friends catching up over coffee. Don't act like this is anything other than what it is. You have no right to say my name like that. Like it means something to you. I know, you're absolutely right, but I didn't know about them. I swear on everything I have, I didn't know." "Would it have mattered?" Beauty asked, years of bitterness and exhaustion and loneliness finally finding their voice. "Would you have stayed if you knew? Would you have come looking for me? Or would you have seen us as an inconvenience, a scandal to be managed with money and NDAs and lawyers?" "I don't know," Min-jae said, and the honesty of it cut deeper than any lie could have. "I'd like to think I would have done the right thing, that I would have been there for you, for them. But I can't change the past. I can only ask for a chance to be part of their future, to try to be the father they deserve." "They don't need you," Beauty said fiercely, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "We've been fine without you. We've survived. We'll continue to survive. We always do." "Ioma," Chidi said quietly, stepping forward. "We do need him. Maybe not for survival, but for other things. Medical history, genetic information, educational opportunities, and—" He paused, glancing at his sister, who nodded encouragingly. "And because family is important, you always told us that. You told us about your family in Nigeria, about how much you miss them, how much family matters. Well, he's family, whether you like it or not, whether he deserves it or not, and we want to know him." Beauty closed her eyes, tears finally spilling over despite her best efforts to hold them back. She had fought so hard to protect them, to shield them from rejection and disappointment and the pain of not being enough. And now they were inviting it in willingly, their small but brilliant hearts open in a way hers could never be again. "I need to think," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is too much. This is all happening too fast. I need time." "Take all the time you need," Min-jae said, and his voice was gentler than she remembered, softer than the Ice Prince of Seoul had any right to be. "But let me give you my number, my real number. Direct line, no assistance, no barriers. And let me give you something else." He walked to his desk, pulled out his checkbook, and Beauty's face hardened immediately. "I don't want your money." "It's not for you," Min-jae said, continuing to write despite her protest. "It's child support. 5 years of it. Backdated. It's what I should have been paying all along if I had known they existed." He wrote out a check, the number so large that Beauty's vision actually blurred when she saw it, her brain struggling to process that many zeros. "This isn't charity. This isn't guilt money. This is my legal and moral responsibility. Please, let me do at least this much, for them." Beauty stared at the check, her pride warring with the reality of unpaid bills stacked on her kitchen counter, of her children's worn shoes, and the acceptance letter to the gifted program she didn't know how she would afford, of the exhaustion that lived in her bones, and the constant fear that she wasn't giving them enough, could never give them enough, no matter how hard she tried. "I'll accept it," she said, finally, the words tasting like ash in her mouth, "but only because Chidi and Amara deserve better than what I can give them alone. Not because I forgive you. I don't. You lost 5 years with them. 5 years of memories and moments and milestones that you can never get back. You don't get to just walk in now with your money and your regret and play father." "I understand," Min-jae said, and he meant it, "but I want to try. If you'll let me," slowly, Whatever pace you're comfortable with, I want to know them. I want them to know me, and I want to support you, all of you, in whatever way you'll allow. Before Beauty could respond, the office door opened again. Park Ji-hoon stepped in, his face pale, his expression apologetic and tense. "Sir, we have another situation. Your mother is here. Someone from the lobby called her. She knows about the children." Min-jae's face went carefully blank, that ice prince mask sliding back into place. "Tell her I'm in a meeting. She's already on her way up. Security couldn't stop her. She's very upset, sir." Beauty grabbed her children's hands instinctively, pulling them closer. "We should go. We should leave now." "No," Min-jae said firmly, surprising everyone, including himself. "Stay, please. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to be part of their lives, we face this now, together." The elevator chimed down the hall like a death knell. Footsteps approached, sharp and purposeful, the click of expensive heels on marble floor. Kang Hae-jin swept into the office like a cold wind, her designer handbag clutched in one perfectly manicured hand, her hair styled impeccably, her face a mask of controlled fury that would have terrified corporate executives. "Min-jae," she said, her voice ice cold, ignoring everyone else in the room as if they didn't exist. "Tell me the rumors aren't true. Tell me there aren't children downstairs claiming to be your—" She stopped, her eyes landing on Chidi and Amara, then moving to Beauty. Her lips thinned into a line so sharp it could cut glass. "I see. Mother," Min-jae said carefully, his voice measured. "These are my children, Chidi and Amara, and this is their mother, Beauty Okonkwo." Hae-jin's expression could have frozen fire. She didn't move closer, didn't acknowledge the introduction, just stood there, radiating disapproval and something darker. "Get them out, now, before this becomes a scandal that destroys everything we've built, everything you've worked for." "They're not going anywhere," Min-jae said, his voice dropping to a temperature that matched his nickname. "The Ice Prince, facing the Ice Queen. They're my children, your grandchildren." "Grandchildren?" Hae-jin laughed, but there was no humor in it, just sharp edges and contempt. "Look at them, Min-jae. Look at her. This is obviously a scheme, a trap. Some foreign woman saw you in a magazine and decided to manufacture a payday. You can't possibly believe we have DNA evidence." Chidi interrupted, stepping forward with his folder, his voice calm and factual. "Would you like to see the results, Halmione? The test was conducted by Gene Lab Korea, which I believe your own company uses for genetic research. The probability of paternity is 99.9%. That's as close to certainty as science can provide." Hae-jin flinched visibly at the word Halmione, grandmother, as if the child had struck her. "Don't call me that. And I don't care what some falsified document says. DNA tests can be faked. This woman clearly targeted you, got pregnant on purpose, and now she's using these children to extort money from our family. It's a classic scheme." "Actually," Amara said, her voice sharp with intelligence and indignation, "the scheme would be more effective if we were asking for ongoing support rather than simply introducing ourselves. Extortion requires continued threats. We've made no threats. We simply presented facts. Also, your logic is flawed. If Ioma wanted money, she would have come 5 years ago when she first found out about him. She didn't. We found him. She didn't even want us to come." "Enough," Min-jae said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You will not speak about them that way. You will not speak about Beauty that way. These are my children. I know it. I can see it in their faces, their mannerisms, their intelligence. And even if you can't accept it, even if you refuse to see it, I do. If you acknowledge them publicly," Hae-jin said coldly, taking a step closer to her son, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "I will remove you from the company. I will cut you off from the family. I will make sure every door in Seoul closes to you. Do you understand? You cannot afford this scandal. Think about the shareholders. Think about our reputation. Think about everything you've built." "I'm thinking about my children," Min-jae said, and his voice was quieter now but somehow more powerful. "For the first time in 5 years, I'm thinking about what actually matters. And if you force me to choose between them and your approval, Mother, you will lose. Every single time." The silence that followed was deafening. Beauty held her children close, their small but growing bodies trembling against her despite their brave faces. Hae-jin stared at her son like she'd never seen him before, like he'd suddenly become a stranger. "You would throw everything away," she said slowly, each word deliberate. "For a woman you spent one night with and children you just met 2 hours ago?" "Yes," Min-jae said simply, without hesitation. "Because they're mine. Because I lost 5 years I can never get back. Because my children grew up in poverty while I had the resources to give them everything they needed and more. Because doing the right thing matters more than doing the convenient thing. And because if I let you bully me into denying them, I'll never forgive myself. I'll become exactly the kind of man I never wanted to be." Hae-jin's face twisted with something ugly. She turned to Beauty, her eyes full of contempt and something else, something that looked almost like fear. "How much do you want? Name your price, take your children and disappear. Go back to wherever you came from. I'll make sure you're comfortable. Very comfortable. Just stay away from my son and forget this ever happened." Beauty straightened to her full height, her voice steady despite the shaking in her hands. "Your money means nothing to me. Your approval means even less. I came here today because my children ran away from school to find their father. That's all. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. What happens next isn't up to you. It's not even up to me anymore. It's up to him." She looked at Min-jae, her eyes hard. "And whether he can prove he deserves to be in their lives, whether he can be the man they need him to be, the father they deserve." She took Chidi and Amara's hands. "We're leaving now. You have my number. If you want to see them, you can call. If you decide this is too complicated, if your mother's threats matter more than they do, that's fine too. We survived 5 years without you. We'll survive the rest. We always do." "Wait," Min-jae said, taking a step forward. "Please, don't leave like this. Let me take you home. Let me see where you live. You've seen enough for one day," Beauty said firmly. "And so have they. This has been too much, too fast. We all need time to process what happened here, to think about what comes next." She walked toward the door, her children following, but Amara broke free and ran back to Min-jae. She looked up at him with eyes that were perfect mirror images of his own, intelligent and assessing and somehow already ancient despite her 9 years. "Will we see you again?" she asked quietly, and there was something vulnerable in her voice now, the first crack in their confident facade. "Really? Or is this goodbye?" Min-jae knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level, then gestured for Chidi to come closer too. Both twins stood before him, and he could see himself in every feature, every expression. "Yes," he promised, his voice rough with emotion. "I swear to you both, I'm not disappearing again. I'm going to be the father you deserve. It might take time. I'll probably make mistakes. I have a lot to learn, but I'm not going anywhere. You have my word." "Words are easy," Chidi said, his analytical mind never resting. "We'll judge you by your actions. That's what Ioma taught us. Actions matter more than words." "Then watch what I do," Min-jae said. "Both of you. Hold me accountable. If I fail, call me out. You're smart enough to know when someone is being genuine and when they're just saying what you want to hear. So watch me, test me, and I'll prove myself. Somehow." Amara studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, we'll give you a chance. But if you hurt Ioma again, if you make promises you don't keep, Chidi and I will never forgive you. She's been hurt enough. She's sacrificed everything for us. We won't let anyone hurt her again, not even you." "I understand," Min-jae said, and he did. These children were fierce protectors of their mother, and he respected them for it, loved them for it, even though he'd only known them for hours. "I'll do better, I promise." The twins returned to their mother, and Beauty ushered them out quickly, not looking back. The door closed softly behind them, and Min-jae stayed kneeling on the floor, staring at the space where his children had been, feeling like he'd just witnessed the most important moment of his life and somehow simultaneously failed it completely. "You're making a terrible mistake," his mother said into the heavy silence. "No," Min-jae said, standing up slowly. "I made a mistake 5 years ago when I let Beauty slip away without getting her contact information properly. I made a mistake every day since then by not trying harder to find her. But I'm not making a mistake now. Those children are mine. I see myself in them, not just physically, but in the way they think, the way they analyze everything, the way they're brilliant and determined. And I'm going to be their father, whether you approve or not." Hae-jin gathered her purse, her face closed off and cold. "Then you're on your own. Don't come crying to me when this woman ruins you, when her children destroy your reputation, when everything you've built comes crashing down because you couldn't control your emotions for one night 5 years ago." "If that happens," Min-jae said quietly, "it would still be worth it. Because they're worth it, even if I barely know them yet." Hae-jin left without another word, her footsteps echoing down the hallway like gunshots. The door slammed behind her, rattling the awards on Min-jae's walls. Ji-hoon emerged from the corner where he'd been trying to be invisible during the confrontation. "Sir," he said carefully, "what do you need me to do?" Min-jae walked to the window, looking out at Seoul, wondering which direction Beauty and his children had gone, wondering if they were on the subway right now, wondering what they were saying about him. Find out everything about Beauty Okonkwo. Not to investigate her. I believe what the children said, but I need to understand their life, where she works, what her schedule is like, what they need, set up accounts for their education. That gifted program they mentioned, make sure it's paid for. Anonymously for now if Beauty won't accept direct help. And your mother? Let her cool off. Or don't. I don't care right now. My priority is those children and proving to them and their mother that I mean what I said. Ji-hoon nodded and moved toward the door, then paused. "And sir, if I may say something?" "Go ahead. I've worked for you for 6 years. I've never seen you care about anything the way you cared about those children in the 2 hours they were here. Whatever happens next, I think this is a good thing. For you. You've been frozen for a long time. Today you came alive." After Ji-hoon left, Min-jae stood alone in his office, surrounded by the trappings of success that suddenly felt meaningless. Awards and patents and profits meant nothing compared to the weight of his daughter's small hand on his arm when she asked if she'd see him again, or the analytical assessment in his son's eyes as he tested his father's sincerity, or the strength he'd witnessed in Beauty's spine as she'd walked away with her head held high despite everything. He had built an empire, but he'd missed the birth of his children. He'd closed billion-dollar deals while Beauty worked double shifts to feed them. He'd been called a genius while his 9-year-olds figured out how to hack medical records and conduct paternity tests. But something else gnawed at him now, something that wouldn't let him rest. His mother's threats weren't empty. Kang Hae-jin was powerful, connected, and ruthless when she wanted to be. She could make his life difficult. She could turn the board against him. She could create problems for Beauty and the children in ways he couldn't yet imagine. And Beauty herself was an unknown equation. She was proud, fierce, clearly capable of disappearing if she felt threatened or overwhelmed. He had her number, but would she answer? Would she let him in? Or would she decide that today was too much, that he represented danger to the careful life she'd built for her children, and the children themselves brilliant, analytical, protective of their mother? They said they'd give him a chance, but they were also smart enough to walk away if he failed to prove himself. How did you prove yourself to 9-year-olds who could hack medical records and had probably already created a detailed scoring system for evaluating his worthiness as a father? The city glittered below him, full of possibilities and second chances, but also full of threats and obstacles. Somewhere out there, his children were riding the subway home, probably already analyzing everything that had happened, recalculating their plans based on new data. Beauty was probably holding them close, maybe crying now that they couldn't see her, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake by taking that check, by not running farther and faster. And his mother was probably already on the phone with family lawyers, board members, anyone who could help her neutralize what she saw as a threat to the family legacy. Kang Min-jae had faced hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, and technological challenges that would have broken lesser men. But he had never faced anything like this. He had never had so much to lose and so much to gain simultaneously. The impossible had become possible. He had children. Brilliant, beautiful, complicated children who came with a mother who both fascinated and terrified him, who had survived 5 years of hardship he couldn't imagine, who looked at him with eyes that had seen too much struggle and not enough gentleness. But would he be allowed to be their father? Would his mother's threats tear apart this fragile new possibility before it could take root? Would Beauty's pride and justified anger keep him at arm's length forever? Would the children decide that their father was more trouble than he was worth? And perhaps most importantly, could he actually do this? Could the Ice Prince of Seoul, the man who had built walls around his heart for years, learn to be warm, to be present, to be the father that Chidi and Amara deserved, the partner that Beauty might eventually need? The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and Kang Min-jae realized that his carefully ordered life had just been completely upended by two 9-year-olds with his face and their mother's courage. Everything he thought he knew about his future had changed in the space of a few hours. The real question wasn't whether he wanted to be in their lives. That answer was already clear, carved into his heart the moment he saw their faces. The real question was whether he would be allowed to try, whether Beauty would give him a chance, whether his mother would destroy him for choosing them, whether the children would accept him once they saw all his flaws and failures. And as the office grew dark around him, as Seoul lit up below like a galaxy of electric stars, Kang Min-jae made a decision. Whatever it cost him, whatever battles he had to fight, he would not lose his children again. He would not let them disappear back into a life of struggle and poverty while he had the means to help them. He would not be the absent father, the convenient check writer, the man who showed up only when it didn't inconvenience him. But how? How did you prove yourself to a woman who had every reason to distrust you? How did you win over children who had learned to survive without you? How did you stand against a mother who would use every weapon in her considerable arsenal to keep you from claiming a family she didn't approve of? The answers weren't in any business book or corporate strategy. This wasn't a problem he could solve with money or influence alone. This required something he'd buried years ago when the doctors told him children were impossible. This required hope, vulnerability, the courage to risk everything on a possibility that might reject him anyway. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. His mother would make her move. Beauty might not answer his calls. The children might decide he wasn't worth the disruption to their lives. The media might catch wind of the story and turn his private miracle into a public scandal. But tonight, in the darkness of his office, Kang Min-jae allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, but determination, born of something deeper than ambition or pride. He had children. Against all medical odds, against all probability, he had children, a son who thought like him and a daughter who challenged him. And somewhere in Seoul, in a cramped apartment he'd never seen, those children were real and alive and possibly wondering if their father would actually keep his promises. The only question now was what he would do next, and whether it would be enough.